Hi there, my name is Oli Jungirius and I'm your host of our fifth and last episode of Season 1 of BeamReach and Beyond. This episode is dedicated to the fashion industry. And joining us today are Elena Fadul, Theona Ioana and Nadine Schratzberger, who will share their rich experience of working in fashion across Finland, Colombia, Germany, Austria and Romania. In this episode, we discuss cultural appropriation in fashion, overview of the upcoming laws and directives in European Union aimed to have more transparency in the supply chain, a comparison of skills and value of artisan craft in Europe and the Global South, the importance of ownership and being a responsible consumer, the danger of fast fashion and how it impacts equal pay and resource distribution, and companies to follow who are dedicated to inclusive, fair, and equal practices. Let's dive into this conversation. Let's go ahead and get ourselves introduced. Elena, do you want to go ahead first?
Hi, Ola. Thank you for having me today. My name is Elena. I live in Helsinki. I have been living here for 15 years, but I'm originally from Colombia. I am building a high-end fashion brand called Inca Noir. I launched it last week. And the focus of the company is to raise awareness on the importance of cultural sustainability. And for that purpose, I work with indigenous master artisans from Colombia, where we are giving them full credit for their work. But most importantly, we are preserving their symbolism and their cultural traditions that are stamped on the textiles, so that we are bringing the message to Europe, from Colombia to Europe, where we are, reminding people how these ancient philosophies and wisdom can be very useful in modern times, and we should connect back to our roots. So that's my company.
That's beautiful. We're definitely going to talk a lot about that. Cultural appropriation has been quite a bit of a topic in fashion lately, isn't it?
Yes, I don't like it. We don't like cultural appropriation.
Very cool. All right, Theona, what about you?
Hi, I'm Theona. I'm from Iași, Romania. My company is called Teluric. I design leather bags out of vegetable tan leather and recycled leather. And I design round bags that convert from backpacks to crossbody bags to shoulder bags in order to give women more time in order to get ready, and also a need for less product. So encouraging a more sustainable and circular approach when it comes to our fashion accessories.
Wonderful. It definitely will save a lot of women time in the morning while getting ready and deciding what to wear and how to wear. I personally always forget either my wallet or keys to this and that. And then you're running around to your apartment trying to find where you actually put it. So very, very good. And last but not least, Nadine.
Hi, my name is Nadine. I'm from Vienna, Austria. And I'm a designer for circular economy in the sportswear industry. My brand is called Montreet. And I'm also a lecturer and workshop giver for students in the university. And I'm also the co-founder of Fashion Revolution Austria. So it's about the rights in garment workers. And there's also a big problem about inclusion in the fashion industry in this way. Yeah.
Wonderful. A lot of very different topics we could cover today. So let's see how far you're going to go ahead. I guess the first question is, what is happening in fashion industry related to diversity, equity, and inclusion? What is the current state of affairs? Where do you see the industry that has changed maybe for the past 5-7 years? Where it was 5-7 years ago and where is it now? What are the current, so to say, trends, even though I'm not a big fan of the word trend when it comes to diversity and equity, but what is happening?
I can go starting from the perspective of what's happening in Romania. Yes, there is a change from, let's say, 10 years ago when it comes to body image issues, maybe a bit of more inclusion, but where we're standing right now, Romania still has a long way to go. When you watch right now, I don't know, fashion shows or interact with models and with the entire industry, I've noticed that there is still a big issue with, the body image of models. That would be a first layer. Well, of course, the industry is still full of underage girls that have absolutely no idea how in the long term this would affect them, and the whole attitude of men in the industry, of the whole idea that they still need to be a certain size in order to be put out there and make it big. And also there's still, for example, I've had the shock of having, for a photo shoot, brought in a model that they told me, well, she's considered a plus size in the model industry. And they brought, a perfectly looking woman, that just didn't happen to be a size 0 or a size 2. So still a long way to go when it comes to body image issues and in fashion.
You kind of see the role models organizations like H&M. I mean, they're not role models in other things, but what I see, for example, they have very different kind of models there and a lot more diverse representation. So I wonder if in the future other companies are going to follow that as well. Yeah. Elena, what about you?
I was thinking what I was going to say. Yeah, I think that, there's conversation starting to happen. So you read about, the body types represented on the catwalks and the model profiles, etc. However, I think that we still have a long, long way to go. This is an issue that has many layers. It's very complex. And for example, in my particular case, where I work with communities and indigenous communities from Colombia, I can see that, or what we see is that there's still a very European-centric perspective when working with these communities. Their work is not as valued as if it would have been made in France or Italy. And when you compare skill to skill in developing countries or in more vulnerable communities, you find perhaps the same amount of skill and talent than you would find in Europe. And that's something that you rarely talk about, that it's rarely heard. And whenever you hear that something has been made by an artisan, it's usually under the umbrella of a famous European designer. And that's how people think that it's a valuable thing. When you have it as a standalone thing, then people immediately assume that because it comes from a developing country, it's not as valuable and therefore it has to be cheaper. So that's a conversation that is still not, happening, and that I wish that we would talk about these things more, because it's not because you were born in India or in Africa or in Colombia that as an artisan who has been learning a skill for generations and generations, your work is any less valuable than what is done by an artisan in Italy or France.
I really like what Elena said, because I was thinking the same when you dropped the questions. It's all about the supply chain. It's not only about output, like it's also from the inside. And what I like to see is the European Union, for example. Like, I know I'm European, I'm sitting in Austria in the middle of Europe, but they are working on a supply chain law. And France and Germany, I don't know if you heard, they are already working on this law, and it's out there. And as we can see in Bangladesh, they are really working on it. And also big companies, which we do fast fashion, they are now a little bit in a bad position, hopefully, they should ever be in a bad position because of this law, because over Germany, Bangladesh had the possibility to say, hey, something went wrong here. They didn't get paid as they should have paid. They had have to work in a really bad environment. And in this whole issue, it's all about women all the time. Like it's all these crises, the climate crisis, it's a crisis on the backs of women. And also this fashion crisis is also something on the back of women, because like this fashion industry, mostly women work in the fashion industry. So yeah, I hope this law will start going all over Europe, because like for Europe, it's a issue. The global south, there's a big difference, as you said, Elena. Like, what the fuck? Sorry. This is now in a podcast but
that's okay. There is no censorship here, so you can emotions.
Yeah, but like I hope there's a turnaround, but we have to keep in mind that greenwashing will start again also with these laws. So yeah, but the past 10 years there was a shift, but I think it's still not enough. When I say it's not enough, I think about this guy in Gossip Girl, this stepdad from Blair. I don't know if you remember, he wanted to hug all the time everyone, and he always said, not enough.
Yeah, I wanted to add a little bit. I think one of the main, or what I see as one of the main issues in fashion and as an obstacle for inclusivity and diversity and equity, is that we have forgotten that every product that is produced, there is a human behind. Like, we have forgotten that there are real humans behind in the supply chain, whether they do it, very slowly by hand, a very talented artisan, or if it's just a garment worker in Bangladesh. We have forgotten that these products are produced by someone. And so there's also a great deal of unlearning that we need to do as consumers, so that we understand that the first level of inclusivity, I think, is to start paying fair for this product that is produced, and to understand that there are real humans and families and women and men and children behind all these products, and that they too deserve to have a decent livelihood. And I think that's like the base of all these problems that are seen nowadays in fashion. And I think that would be one of the first steps to sort of understand that equity and inclusivity and diversity start by understanding that there's humans involved all around.
Yes, this is what I also wanted to say. You said it more nicer as I was able to say it. Because I also think people shop here. They go on these main streets and shop, and they just see the product, because like these garment workers, they're so far away. But in the end, it's a people's business. And this is, I think, sometimes a really this is the most big problem, because like they also forget about quality. And I come from a country where we had a lot of tailors. But now there are only 3 left because of industrializations, because it's too expensive to produce in Austria. And also, like, people forget, like, they say, oh, my jeans are ripped off. I throw it in the bin, and like, but this is, somebody did this. Like,
yeah, I think we need a bit more transparency when it comes to the manufacturing process, and educate people more about the actual conditions. But that's the problem, where the big companies aren't willing to do that, because they're putting up that entire front. I think there was, I think even Inditex had a campaign in which they brought a lot of influencers to film the factories in which the garments were made and everything. But it was a very nice front put up, but when the reality of those factories is completely different when it comes to working conditions and wages and all that.
Yeah, it was actually Shein. It was terrible, and there was a lot of backlash about it, because Shein is worse than H&M and Inditex and all of them. But yeah, just to say that it was Shein.
So we could have like at the end, the block list. So H&M, Shein, and so on and so forth. Yeah. So what
But
do
yeah, you know what? Sorry, Ola. You know what, Elena? Like I was in a panel with and there was H&M Austria, and I said, when will you stop? Like, and he said, we won't stop because there's Shein. We fight against Shein. So here, like, what the fuck? It's again this very
As long as they make their money at the end of the year and they're on a profit, they won't care. It's somebody else's problem to deal with. They put the entire, especially with sustainability now, there's a lot of discourse about putting that responsibility on the consumer. And yes, we might have an impact when it comes to our choices, our everyday choices, if we recycle, where we buy our clothes from, how we use them. But in the end, the very big problems can only be changed by the big companies and their decisions.
That was actually so when I moved the conversation into how much have the consumers' preferences and demands have changed, and how much impact do they make on the driving industry into different direction, whether it comes to more inclusive practices or more diverse representation or more diverse representation of different fashion brands and different types of bodies or whatever there is.
I think there is a big gap between what consumers say they want and what they actually purchase. And, there's data to back that up, that people say that they want inclusive brands, they want sustainable brands, they want good brands, responsible brands. But then when you go and see the numbers, they're not really buying. And that's, something that it's pretty sad to hear because of so much discourse that goes on, so much, activism and noise and talking about, yes, we want fashion to change, we want more fashion to change. But then in the end, that's not reflected in purchases. And at least here in Finland this year, I think most sustainable and, responsible brands have shut down. Like they are going bankrupt because of course, the war, the inflation, the economic crisis. But in the end, it's because, their consumers were not loyal enough and then they stopped buying to put it, short. So that's why I talk, even though I agree that it's the company's responsibility to change and to implement laws to make things more or better, to make things better. In the end, there needs to be a very, very big work on educating consumers. And that's slow and it's sometimes boring and too complex and people just disengage. But in the end, consumers dictate what they want with their wallets. And it's important to educate them on how that purchase that they're making is important. And I'm going to give you an example that is not related in fashion, but it's actually, what happens in Colombia. We have always had the stigma of being the country that produces cocaine. You all know that. The country has been in a conflict for 60 years. There has been a great number of people displaced and murdered. And we would like to change that. But when you go and see that the consumers of cocaine are celebrities and rich people, CEOs, etc., then you understand that it's going to be very difficult to change what happens in Colombia because there's still the demand and there will always be the supply. That's the most basic rule of economics. And I think it's similar in fashion. As long as people are buying Shein and H&M and thinking that it's okay that they're getting a deal because they get a 10-euro shirt, then it's going to be very difficult to change the industry. And when I talk about this, I'm not including people who are actually poor and they don't have any other chance than to buy from these companies, but a great deal of people who are not in a situation still consume from those brands. And when you talk about it to them, they're like, well, it's beautiful. I like it. It looks good on me. And, I'm going to buy it. They don't really care about what's behind. And that's something that we need as the industry to understand. And that's one of the main responsibilities I think fashion brands should have is to educate the consumer and make them understand that, yes, you can look good, but also do good with your wallet.
So basically, consumers want to have sustainable fashion as long as it's cheap.
Exactly. But when you are responsible and you do things well, it's not cheap. That's horrible.
That's the part about education that you were also saying, and making them understand that in the long run, yes, you might be paying a bit more for one product now, but it's going to last you years on. So you're actually getting more for your money.
Yeah, and also the resellable price, like educating people. The secondhand market is exploding. Educating people on the fact that if they buy a good product that is made of good materials that is going to last, it's going to have like a higher resale value. So that's something that is also very rarely talked about.
Yes, I think it should be just a good mixture to make a system change. On that one hand side, the government need to do something, and also like the customer. I think they're both. And also like, I can speak for my country. There are a lot of startups who really like try to show the value of local production and local sustainable designers and brands. And I think they're really doing good. And yeah, like I think this mixture, it's not only the customer, but because like when you go on the main street, then there still is fast special you can buy, and you don't see this local and quality brands, then there is also a problem. I think also the big cities, they maybe need to change how to whom they give the space, like the brand to sell it. And yeah, because this would be nice, like greener cities. And then they say, oh no, on the mainstream, it's not allowed to have Zara and H&M. They should be in the side streets, and in the big streets, there should be quality brands and all this stuff. Like that would be an idea.
Yeah, I wanted to add that, for motivating consumers more, companies should make an effort into building better brands, more engaging brands. I see a lot of companies here in Finland that start, or they build their brand about being diverse and sustainable and responsible, but that's not a brand. That's the benefits and the attributes of your brand, but it doesn't make your brand. And when you look at very good brands, very strong brands, like again out of the fashion industry, like Apple is one of the most valuable brands, and when you see how they do their communications, it's all about the beauty of the product, how user friendly it is, how well designed it is, and they don't really talk much about sustainability. They engage the consumer on those things first, and then when you go and read their website, they're actually doing pretty good work on sustainability. Like they're running their headquarters in the US. They are run in 100% renewable energy already. They just switched from leather to these woven straps. They are doing a lot of restoration work in Colombia. I didn't know about that. It was very interesting to see. So the point is that when we build strong brands, that have that emotional connection with the consumer, that is not about being sustainable, then the consumer is more likely to engage with that brand and be more loyal and give them money no matter the circumstances. And one parallel that I was taught at school was that when you have a strong brand, it's almost like building a religion. When you are very religious, when you believe, with your eyes closed in your religion, you don't care about anything else. And the same happens with brands. I mean, you go and benchmark iconic brands. It's usually like that. Like people just love them no matter what the company does, they will give them money. And so I think that's the thing that's missing in the conversation about, responsible fashion and diversity and equity, that we are forgetting that they're also businesses, and we are in an industry that is very dependent and reliable on branding. And so it needs to be a very strong branding exercise. We need to build strategic brands that behind in the backstage have all these good things, but the front end is like an emotional, beautiful, almost irrational connection with the consumers.
Yeah, I can confirm from experience that when it comes to especially the luxury market, the customers. I mean, I've been trying to talk a lot about the fact that, okay, there's the sustainability. These are the choices you can make. They don't care. As long as it's pretty and it looks good and it's in their budget, they don't care. But yeah, you have a very good point about, well, might as well put a good brand and a good product out there. And then you can also convince them they're happy with one extra box ticked with, hey, it's also sustainable.
That's something that we decided to do with our brand. I do this with my husband, and we knew that people don't really care about it being sustainable. And so we spent hours trying to think about what would be the other message that we could, direct to the consumer. And then we settled on symbolism. So even though the products are 100% traceable, they're locally produced, good materials made by hand, we don't use the words sustainability. We don't use the words responsibility. We're very focused on the artistic part of it, the cultural side of it, and then what people relate to here in Finland, which is, so disconnected and detached from Colombia, is the symbolism. And that's actually what makes the sale for us. So when I talk about these symbols not being designed by me, but being, millennia-old symbols that have been transmitted from generation to generation, immediately that elicits interest in the person that is listening to the story. And the first question is, okay, what does this mean? And then when I start saying, okay, it's a universal language, it's about the beautiful things that unite humanity, like love and empathy and balance and your family and your friends and your supporters. And they're like, oh, wow, anyone can relate. And we're building the brand basically on that aspect. We're just talking about like this universal language, the beauty of being human, and people respond much better than when I talk, this is sustainable, this is responsible, and I'm empowering. I want to put air quotes on that word. The communities, they don't need empowering. They're fine where they are. They're very talented people. They have their small businesses. They're I wouldn't say they don't have challenges. We all have challenges, but they are pretty content with what they have. They have a good life. They make enough money to be able to stay in their communities. And so I don't talk about those things. I talk about the beautiful things, the relatable, universal aspects of those things. And that works much better than talking about sustainability and responsibility, even though it is there.
So I just drawing a parallel when I was in Peru a few years back, and you see amazing artisan products, and you see a lot of Western consumers there handling, and it's already, compared to Euro, it's already very, very affordable. Handling that and, dropping the price from, €5 to €4 and really making a big deal out of it. Or from €100 to €50. But you see the same products in this little flea markets and little Sunday markets, Saturday markets in Berlin, and prices are maybe 10 times more. And people don't really haggle that because it's already in Berlin, or it's already in Paris, or it's already in Milan. So there is no connection that it's exactly the same product, but because you bought it in a different country, that means you already have the right to haggle. And also companies like Vinted, I know everyone I know uses Vinted just to sell, resell, and so on and so forth. Do you think that also drives the way people see fashion in a more responsible way, or is it to save money? What drives that?
I can start if you want. I think Vinted and secondhand is a part of a system change. It's just a part of it. I think it's good that people shop secondhand, because we still have a lot of fashion. We have also this problem with waste in fashion. So I think it's not bad to have it, but always in a conscious way, I think people also sometimes do it because it's trendy to wear secondhand, and then they overshop. So, and the most sustainable, it's a buzzword. I hate sustainable, the word. But the most sustainable clothes is the one which is already in your wardrobe. So yeah, I think it's good to make it more easier to shop it, because also old people, as my parents, they shop secondhand. And so I think, okay, there is a change in their minds about it, but it's not enough. It's a responsible way of living but it's not enough. Like you can't say, okay, I'm now doing something good because I shop secondhand. I think you have to see the bigger picture. Yeah. So, and there's also like this big problem because before secondhand shops were trendy, we shipped everything to the global south. And there they did secondhand and readjust all the clothes. Now we keep the good things and the bad things go to the global south. So they have a big problem. Everything lands in the sea. So there's a really nice documentary about it. And I think it's now like going all down the tunnel. Secondhand is a good option, but it's not enough for me, because when I was in summer, I did a student's training. Just a short story. And there was a guy, he was like, oh, you're working on sustainable fashion. And I want to tell you, I only shop secondhand. And every time I go to uni, so this is basically every day, I go through this street with all these secondhand shops and I shop something. I was like, okay, you shop every day. Like, what is like sustainable about it? So I really questioned him about it. So I think also you have to take care and see the bigger picture about it. But it's nice that we have wintered and people are really like keen on doing it.
Yeah, I totally agree with Nadine. The problem is not secondhand, whether it's good or not. It's overconsumption and overproduction. As long as Shein and H&M and Inditex and Pretty Little Thing and all of Boho and all of these fast fashion brands keep on churning at the rate they are churning clothes, secondhand is not doing anything for that. Because people are going to keep on buying en masse from Shein, making a hole. And then the next week, they're probably going to dump everything in a secondhand shop. And what good is it to buy something from Shein secondhand? It's still going to break pretty soon. Like the quality is not there. Secondhand should be for things of good quality, like things that last, things that are made well, that can be passed on, and not for things that are going to be broken and are made of the worst quality. And the problem I see with secondhand is that just as sustainability, it's becoming a bandwagon. I do it to show that I care, but it doesn't really do anything if you're doing Shein secondhand, because Shein is not stopping their production of, I don't know how many tons. It's vulgar and obscene how many clothes they produce every day. And, the problem is still going to be there. Those clothes are still going to be shipped to the global south. Those clothes are going to still be discarded in Africa and in Chile. So again, I come back to what I said earlier about educating. We have a lot of work to do in educating people, in making them understand that this is in the long term really bad to buy from these brands. They are made out of, fossil fuel based threads. They are of bad quality. They don't last. And the people doing them are basically modern slaves. Why would you support that? Why not saving for 2 months to buy something a little bit better? No one is saying go buy luxury, but something a little bit better. Something made, there's good European made brands that are not that expensive, they're around 100, 200 euros. You can save that. Think about it. Like, stop buying 10 Shein clothes, 10 pieces of Shein clothes at 10 or 15 euros a piece. I don't know how I don't know how much they cost because I've never bought anything from Shein. But imagine you don't buy those 10 crappy shirts and then you buy something beautiful made in Portugal or in Lithuania or I don't know, some of the, less expensive countries in Europe, and you're going to have a much better piece of clothing that you can probably use for a longer time and you can maybe resell for, 50, 60 euros, who knows? And that's something that is very seldom talked about. And that's the problem I see with secondhand. Being gentrified, it doesn't really, fix the root problem. And people just do it for appearing, for a veneer. I'm sorry if I sound very judgmental, but the fact that it's growing so fast means that probably that's the reason that people are like, oh, secondhand is the trend. And I'm going to be a good person, buy secondhand. And then That's not the problem. The problem is overproduction and overconsumption. As you said, Nadine, that why would you buy secondhand every day? I mean, do you need it really?
Not in the fashion industry. I don't understand anything what is happening. I don't really know brands. Where do I educate myself? Are there any websites or resources? That's the first question. And do you also recommend specific brands that you can, from the top of your head, say that they are responsible, they're inclusive practices, and they pay appropriately? Can you give some examples?
Well, let's start with Fashion Revolution. I think Fashion Revolution is a very good source of information. It's a matter of will that you take your computer, you Google, and you start finding information. But I think Fashion Revolution has a very good, compilation of information and education that you can start from. Then there is, the co-founder of Fashion Revolution, Ursula de Castro. She has published a book that is really nice. It's called something about
Loved Clothes Last.
And so it's a book where you learn how to mend and repair your things. And then what comes to brands, I think that you really need to do a little bit of due diligence. And whenever you are in front of a brand, you need to go and read the small print, you need to go and read what they say about their responsibility. I personally, when I go to a website or a brand that looks okay, and then I go read their sustainability and they say, we're planning to change our production by 2030. I'm like, this is just bullshit. And I just get out. When they give you facts and data, then you know that it's a good brand and that you can trust them and you can purchase. For example, in my case, I work with Fairmind Certified Gold. That's a certification for gold that was born in Colombia. It's created from a gold-producing country for a gold-producing country. And besides Fairtrade and Fairmind, they are the only guarantees available in the market for you to be sure that the gold was extracted without any harm done to the environment or to the people extracting it. And so that's written on the website. Like, our gold is Fairmind certified. When we use recycled metals, we say the source of the recycling metal. I mean, I don't want to take too long, but metals are tricky because they are not trash. They are never thrown away. And so recycling silver and metal and gold, and other metals is nothing new. And now it's being used for greenwashing and for companies to say like, oh, look, we're so sustainable, we use recycled gold. But what's the origin of that recycled material? There's a difference. If it comes from post-consumer jewelry or technological waste, or from X-rays. In my case, we use silver from X-rays. Then you know that, okay, yeah, it's sort of being rescued from something that was discarded, not the traditional way. And so it might have a good impact. When it's just recycled gold, the odds are that a week ago, it was extracted in the Amazon illegally using mercury, poisoning everything around it. And the moment it arrives to Europe and you just melt it once, you can call it recycled. You see? So it's very important to dissect what companies are saying and not swallow whole. That's what I like to tell people. Like, go and contextualize and read and do a little bit of due diligence, and then you will know, you can discern if that company is true or if they are just greenwashing their consumer to sell more.
I agree with Elena. Like, Fashion Revolution is a really good start. They also have this transparency index for people. Like, then you can see how transparent each brand is. And in Germany, there is this NGO, or it's a company. It's called Fashion Changers, and they have this Fashion ABC. And in this Fashion ABC, you can look everything up from swimwear to outerwear to just luxury wear, everything you need for your daily wardrobe. So you really can see which brands are responsible. But as Elena said, you have to educate yourself. And this is also what I see in my network, that some people, they just call me and say, tell me, can I buy this? And people are lazy. And this is also a problem. This is a really big problem because they just want to go out of their door and when they search for something, it should be like in front of them, like this consumer convenience, like this journey should be super convenient. But like, if you want to change something in your behavior, you have to educate yourself. And like this laziness, I don't want to do consumer bashing, but it's part of laziness, and you have to do research, because like also some people, like they write me, and like yesterday, a customer wrote me an email. I just saw that you're doing this and that, but it's not available in my size anymore. I was like, yeah, because it's limited edition and I won't do it again, because like it's not responsible to like overproduce it. And he was like, you should produce it again. I was like, what the fuck? Only because you are like, again, this bad word, but like you are just one customer, and for that I should like produce 300 products, you know, because he said I would be good on that. Like, and I'm there for 3 years. He just found me now. So yeah, that's like, it's all about laziness all the time. And we also could put, Ola, in the keynote some more links where you can find websites which help you to find good.
Yeah, no, that's the, I think for everyone who is listening and not familiar, not educated themselves yet, that could be a good time to, you know, be proactive and research and be more responsible and take accountability.
Yep. Also, regarding what Nadine was saying, I think the laziness also comes from the whole, Amazon Prime delivery concept, and we're so used to ordering it now, having it the next day. That's also, I understood that that's one of the reasons why Etsy sellers have now constant problems, because people just expect Etsy to work in the exact same way as Amazon, as in they don't read through the instructions. They don't see the fact that the product might take, 1 week to be manufactured, and they keep on pushing for that level of speed, and don't even, they don't put in the time to actually read and through what a seller, a manufacturer has spent time, because normally most of the time there's one person behind that small Etsy shop, and they put in the time not only to make it, but to create descriptions and pictures and everything. And somebody else just stumbles upon, clicks, orders everything, and they don't pay attention. And I would say, when it comes to information, Google is always a click away, and you have so many sources of information. And I think it's good to also read both sides and multiple views, and maybe that can help you form an opinion. And when it comes to brands, I always recommend look close to you. Because, for example, I know I have 2 very great brands in my town. They're called Levises and Bredu. One is focused, they actually take yards and yards of salvaged fabric, and they base their collections on that, but they only do pre-order. And Bredu also, again, salvages a lot of waste of textile clothes and thrown out textiles. And they plan everything. They do a lot of patchwork. They do a lot of things to do small collections in order to try to put that material to good use. So when it comes to alternatives, instead of the mall, look for small businesses around you. And that, again, Google can help you do that.
Yeah, it's not about convenience. It's Amazon Prime, 1 click away. Tomorrow I receive the shoes. Tomorrow I receive the shirt that I like, and it's all nice and easy. But how is it when it comes to, we talked about the supply chain, but when it comes to diverse representation and actually understanding that, yes, the default still, it seems to be, Caucasian with a specific body type, with specific needs and specific shape, and someone who doesn't have a disability at all of any sort. What is happening regarding embracing different types of not only body type, but also other preferences and other needs when it comes to diversity, whether it's someone from LGBTQI plus community, unisex, or someone who has a disability. Is there anything happening, any specific brands that thinking more about it or not focusing on Caucasian type of consumer?
Yeah, there are a lot of brands. I like these questions was really like fast now. I will let you know via email because I have to look up all the names. But for example, in Vienna, there's one girl, Nora, she's doing Vale o Vale. It's all about inclusion, like also like having bigger sizes, not only XXS, but also like in the other way around. And I also met a guy, I think he's from Romania, and he's doing specific functional clothing for people in wheelchairs. It's beautiful. It's really beautiful done. I have to look up like the name for you. And also like in the LGBTQ scene, there are a lot of brands, especially in Germany, Berlin, who are working on that. So my brand is about unisex, and it's very funny when people approach me, like women approach me and say, oh, this is for men, and men approach me and say, oh, this is for women. So it's still in our heads that it should be for a specific gender. So, but there's a lot of going on. And when we talk about responsible fashion, I would love to call it like that. There are many ways you have to keep in mind. As Elena said in the storytelling, like you don't have to throw the whole story on the people, but like just with specific words. But in the back end, it's not only about sustainability, it's also about social responsibility and economics. So, yeah, there's always a bigger picture, but I can like tell you a lot of friends who are working on the social side, but not from my mind now.
I would like to add a little bit to that. I think it also is, jumping into diversity and inclusion for the sake of jumping into diversity and inclusion is not what you should be doing, because that's when it becomes like tokenism or social washing or pink washing or any kind of washing. I think you need to be very clear on what your values are and what you stand for as a company. So, for example, in my case, I cannot come up now with a lot of examples because I don't follow a lot what happens. I'm very focused on cultural inclusion and cultural sustainability. So, in my case, I don't really think about, I'm going to be very honest, like different body types or LGBT people. I'm more focused into showing the indigenousness of the products and the makers, and therefore I try to show that also on the communication. So I'm now working with a few indigenous models from Colombia that I want to, photograph for a campaign, and so I am going to put them, at the face of the company. Behind that, I have other layers of inclusivity in my company. So, for example, the products are unisex; they are for everyone who likes them. And then one of my partners is actually a member of the LGBT community, but I don't really publicize that because my thing is about the symbolism and the cultural aspects, and I want to emphasize that. So I don't see that it makes sense for me to have like all the diversity in the world because I'm not really working on those aspects. And I think that's something that companies should, take into account, not to fall into these types of washing. So for example, I've never done a Pride Month because it doesn't feel that it aligns with me. That doesn't mean that I don't care, it's just that it doesn't align with not with me, but I mean the company and what the company is about. And in that sense, I have one brand that I really like that I follow. It's Norla Atelier. So it's a French Mongolian brand. And I really like how everything they show in their communications and their branding is about Mongolia. The models, the videos, the photography, everything is about these Mongolian nomads, and that's what they show. And I think that's a very beautiful example of how to be inclusive and diverse without jumping into the bandwagon of being diverse, equal, and inclusive. If you understand what I'm trying to say. So it has, like with everything in this conversation, it has many layers, and we should not forget that in the end we are about building a company and a brand that is going to be profitable, and you should anchor that on your company values, and from that decide what you're going to do, and not do whatever just because everyone else is doing it, because that doesn't align with what you're doing.
That's what usually happens in, say, no, not all, but some companies that I have to work with, or I'm working with BeamReach Inclusion. A lot of people have a lot of fear when it comes to diversity inclusion. So it's a one tick box exercise. Let's have one-off unconscious bias training, or let's have inclusive leadership training, or whatever not. Something very quick. So we have a bit of a tick the box, and because everybody does diversity inclusion now. So let us, because our employees are pressuring us to do that. So let us also have diversity page. Let us have career page that it's all the tokens represented and so on and so forth. Let's have a Pride Month. Let's have Black Lives Matter post and whatever not. So it comes from DI. It's quite a bit of employer branding, unfortunately. But from my experience, it's also a thin line in the way that you both have to talk about what you do, but don't talk too much, because that becomes also not true. Yeah, it's also just showing off. At the same time, you have to also mention what you do. Otherwise, how would consumers or how would other people know what you actually do? Maybe some good things. I would be curious to see what you talk quite a bit of cultural appropriation. Can you maybe explain to the audience, for those who are not familiar, what is the example where it's done in horribly wrong way? And what could be the way to improve that? So what happens? Because there's been lots of scandals regarding it.
It's mostly always done in a horrible way. That's the problem. Well, if you go online or you see a brand that says indigenous inspired, please get out. That means that they are just stealing. You cannot be indigenous inspired and not work with indigenous communities and the actual artisans. So that's something that I hate with my whole being. And coming from Colombia, it's something that happens even inside Colombia quite often, although it's starting to change now, which is a good thing. But cultural appropriation is simply that, how I understand it, that you don't take in your fashion brand a pattern or a design that you saw, let's say, in the artisan market that you were mentioning, where people were haggling. You just don't go to that market, see that there's this pattern, and then you try and replicate it and sell it as your own. You just don't do that. No one is going to come tell you like, oh, why are you doing that? Well, maybe a few people, a few consumers, but there's no laws, there's no legislation to protect against that. So it's about your ethics and your morals. You know that these art communities, they are people that derive their income from these arts and these crafts. Why would you take that income from them? And that's a fight that I've had with a lot of people, especially on Instagram. I work with the largest indigenous group in Colombia called the Wayu. They were the only group that resisted the Spanish colony. They are fierce warriors. You know, they are basically intact. Still today, they have their language, their culture. And it's cultural appropriation and westernization that is threatening them nowadays. Imagine they resisted the Spanish conquista, and it's the modern world that is bringing them to their knees. And they are probably the best crochet masters in the planet. I have never seen a technique as fine as what they do in Colombia. And so the bags that they produce, they are very colorful, very bright, very beautiful. They have become very popular. You have seen them on celebrities. I actually saw them on Just Like That. The African American teacher that is one of the characters in the second season. She's wearing a Wayu bag, and I was very, very happy. But I recognized him because I know there as well. But they didn't do an effort to sort of, market that bag as Wayu. And because they have become popular, there's a great deal of people copying the patterns, especially in Turkey. And I have a personal fight with that on Instagram. Like, don't copy that. It's, it's protected. It has denomination of origin and it's listed in UNESCO as a craft for peace building that should be safeguarded. It's, it has like these two very high levels of protection. And again, people don't know about these. They're not educated enough. And as a business owner, if you happen to come across a Wayu bag and you think it's beautiful, well, start working with the Wayu. Don't copy it and sell it as your own. Then once you pass that level of not, stealing intellectual property that is not yours, the next thing is to give them credit. And that's something that is basically the core of my business. Is every product comes identified with makers, what the symbol means, who made it, which region, who are these people that made it, what are these tribes that are behind this product, how long did it take, and the traceability of the materials. That's like the basis of the business. It's a very slow thing, like being ethical and responsible. That's why people don't do it. It's hard work. And it takes a lot of time. And I have to sit hours to talk with the communities and learn from them because I don't know these things myself. But then I'm very happy to say that we actually have 100% control of our supply chain and that all the products are marked and identified. And that's actually what my customers love and respect that I tell them. So these are the people behind it. So it's about not stealing. If you are interested, work with the community. And once you work with the community, give them full credit in addition to the asking price that they ask you for the craft. Because as you said, this is something that is done by one person. It takes weeks, sometimes months. My products take between 1 to 2 months to be made one. And bring them to the forefront as the very talented master artisans that they are, because if those products were produced in France for 1 or 2 months, they would be 40,000 euros or 30,000 euros or 12,000 euros. Why not the ones that are made in the global south? They take the same amount of skill. And then another thing, sorry if I'm hijacking the conversation, another thing that we are not talking about often is that because of this cultural appropriation and fast fashion and all these things that happen in fashion, Europe, the rich countries, they are losing their crafts. As Nadine said, there's no tailors left in Austria. There's no crafts left in barely any crafts left in Finland. Artisans, they are, a group of people that it's going extinct quite fast. And besides France and Italy, who have always protected their crafts and their artisans, they're pretty much getting lost all over. And I think that's sad. And that means that, the identities of the countries are being diluted. So there's work on either side. Like, don't steal from global south and protect what you have here in Europe as much as you can, because it's as rich and as interesting as anything that can be made in Africa or East Asia or South America. Europe had its own history of crafts and master artisan. Let's bring them back as well. Let's work with them instead of outsourcing everything.
Yeah, I can actually add to that because Romania is one of the countries that is losing their crafts and are absolutely beautiful. But we actually had a few years ago, I can't remember exactly the year, there was a scandal because Dior actually put on the runway a vest that had all the symbols and embroideries of a traditional Romanian coat, and without any label, any sourcing, there was the whole big scandal of why not work with the Romanians, with the artisans, and pay them a fair wage, but give credit that is where the inspiration is coming from, instead of just putting something out there and putting it as okay, this is an original thing. I think this is where problem is with people nowadays want to just say that fashion is somehow well superficial. So you don't really put that much time into doing the research anymore and to create maybe a collection book with all the inspiration, and maybe also publish that, because there will be people, fashion enthusiasts, that will want to know the whole process, the thinking process, where the inspiration is coming from, maybe what are your sources, everything. And that will also allow for giving the credit where credit is due.
Absolutely. And it's, the luxury industry gets a lot of backlash. Of course, there are brands that say that they are luxury and they're not. But if you do a little bit of research again in the luxury industry, the true luxury companies, which are not commercial brands, which are probably not the most fashion brands that we hear besides probably Hermes, that's what they do. They work with artisans. They go and look for those people that have this knowledge that is about to disappear, and they create basically works of art that are sold not in our mainstream commercial channels. And so that's something that I like to benchmark and take a lot from, because true luxury is about handwork. It's about artistry. It's about craftsmanship. And it's not about outsourcing, delocalizing, mass producing, and not giving credit and not rescuing and protecting crafts. So it is possible to do it. And there is a consumer. It's just that it's not what is public and maybe not as interesting as talking about the bad things going in Southeast Asia or, like all the bad things. There is this beautiful side of fashion and luxury that it's still there. And I think that as people involved or interested in sustainable fashion and diversity, equity, and inclusion, we should look more towards that side of humanity, which is actually what distinguishes us from all the other animal species. What was the first thing we did when we stood on two legs? We started drawing in caves. We started creating these symbols and these stories that, are the foundation of our societies and our civilization. So it would be very beautiful to see more of that conversation going on, and that we as fashion and members of the fashion industry would look more into that and educate the consumer about the beauty of those things that have always been there and that not talked about that much. And I'm not surprised that Dior did that.
Yeah. Do you think now with the rise of technology and AI and whatever not, that also giving even more threats to artisans and, or it's not really, depending who sees that, but would it even make it even more difficult?
I think that it's going to go like this. Okay, we're not going to have the image. It's going to be very dichotomic. It's going to, I think it's going to divide into two branches. The people that are going to go for the super highly mechanized, fast, convenient thing. But then, that every action has a reaction. There's going to be a fraction of people that are going to be even more interested in anything that is made by hand, without any tool, as it was before the Industrial Revolution, basically. I think it's going to go it's going to diverge completely, and they're going to be so separate that I don't see how it's going to be a threat to each one. And where I see a little bit of a threat is in protecting intellectual property rights, especially for, you are a pattern creator or you are a writer or anything that is going to be like a creative exercise. I think that's going to be threatened by AI because they're going to, scrape all the website and everything that you put online. So I think that as creators, we should see or look into ways how to protect our creative work. But for the consumers, I just see a divergence between those that are going to prefer AI and those that are going to really value, again, things that are not made by machines.
I agree. I also think that the whole AI discussion is not necessarily something to be scared about. It might also be a topic that in the long run it could help us, because I've seen a lot of new companies that start to use AI and 3D simulations for garments, and only after the order they will do the whole pre-order system, so they only produce as much as they have orders. So there's no situation for overproduction, overconsumption, things like that. The risk there would be for, companies that would not necessarily do the ethical thing and not deliver on what they promise, or things that the product doesn't resemble the simulation at all. But I know such a company that they're doing the simulations, and then they also do the whole social media in which they show how they make the product. And there's the whole, how is it in the 3D image? How is it the real product? And it's the exact same. It's awesome. They show the handcrafted process. So that is something that could also help us in the long run with not only with production, maybe with simulations on different body types. Because again, that's a big problem with shopping online, right? Because you have no idea how it's going to fit you and if it's something that would actually flatter you. And there's this whole back and forth of returns problems. And it can very well be a friendly thing for us. And I don't think handcrafted products will ever die. We will always have a passion for it. Then we will always have interest. If it hadn't died after the Industrial Revolution, then why would, and there's still becoming more and more, people are more and more interested. We've seen after the pandemic how many people have gone into hobbies or started creating businesses because they wanted to do something with their hands. They wanted to get into that creative space again. Maybe what will happen is there will be a filter of the businesses that will actually survive and that actually put quality on the market. But I still wouldn't see AI as or any kind of technology as a threat to us. As Elena was saying, there are two different aspects that they can also overlap and work together, but not necessarily threatening one another.
Yeah, like just use it responsible. Like when we use everything responsible, like then there's no threat. And as Theona said, like I also see in Austria, we are pretty lost with all this beautiful craftsmanship, but there are really young people who try to bring it back. So there's hope. And I think also with this innovation thing, the fashion industry, however, maybe will divide itself, but also like for pre-order and also these responsible consumption things, like I think this AI will be a great help to just like wrap it up. Because I was listening a lot because you all said so interesting things.
Well, like everything, it should be a tool that is used responsibly.
It's by itself, right? It's the people that use them. And it's exactly the same.
And I think that anyway needs to be legislation coming soon because, we want to be good and be ethical and moral and responsible, but there's always going to be the people that are going to try to take advantage. And so that's when the government should play a role.
Absolutely. Sorry?
Hopefully it's going to happen faster than the whole situation with data protection and how much that took.
Absolutely. And the next question that I thought, it kind of reflecting what you mentioned about how tailors and artisans are more protected in France and in Italy for historical reasons and whatever not. So what can perhaps other countries learn from France and Italy in order to support and maybe empower the industry, but give them the power they deserve and give them the credit they deserve? Would it be some sort of legislation? Would it be lobbying from the industry? And do you see any differences also for you being in Colombia and for you being in Finland in terms of cultural differences as well as
Actually, that's a very high level question. The reason I know about it because I studied luxury management in Paris. So I, studied the history of how the industry came to be. And I think the question is that from very early on, the French government understood the value in the crafts and in the artisans and the craftsmanship. And they moved very early to protect it. So France and Italy are two countries that are absolutely jealous with their artisans and their crafts. It is one of the highest valued occupations that you can have. And when I say highly valued, I don't mean that they make millions. No, it's that they are respected people. They are protected. They work in good places. I have visited workshops myself. They are, as on the same professional level than an engineer, for example. And accessing these traineeships is not easy. They really want the best of the best. And another thing is that maybe you didn't know, but Hermes, that's like my favorite company ever. I cannot afford anything that they produce, but I love how they have built the company. Hermes very recently became a school. They have passed all the government requirements so that when you go to Hermes to study any craft, you leave with a diploma. The odds are that you're going to be hired by Hermes directly, but if you don't want to work for Hermes, you still have your diploma that is accredited and you can go work or start your own business, etc. So that's what France has been doing for years. And that's why nowadays we have a luxury industry that is huge and has these expensive products. The basis of that was protection of artisans and craftsmanship. So without institutional involvement, I don't think that, it can happen. We need to have these organizations, these institutions that are focused on protecting crafts and artisans. I don't know what's the situation in Europe besides France and Italy. I think Spain has something also going on. In Finland, there's very little level. It's not that developed. However, in Colombia is a good example of how you can do it, because Colombia, first of all, is one of the signatories of the UNESCO Convention of Craft Protection. I don't remember the exact name, but there's a chart that countries sign so that they protect their crafts. And for over 20 years, the government has been involved in protecting crafts and artisans. So there's still a long way to go. There's still, these conflicts between indigenous communities and designers, that the designers don't want to pay the communities, etc. But at the institutional level, the Ministry of Culture has this organization called Artesanías de Colombia, so Colombian craftsmanship. And they are focused on supporting, protecting, educating the artisans and therefore the crafts. And so that work has started to pay off just recently. So, after 20, 30 years, Colombia has started to build its place on the world level, at the global level in fashion. Colombian fashion is starting to be respected. It's shown in Milan, it's shown in New York, sometimes in Paris, but it's because of this institutional involvement. And so the communities, the beautiful thing of this institutional involvement is that the communities, when they understand the value of their work, then they are better prepared and they are stronger to fight and demand equal pay, decent pay, etc. So, for example, the products that I launched last week, they are very expensive. They are about 1,000 euros per piece. But I shouldn't be saying this, but in the sake of being transparent, the products cost me, before importing them, so just labor and materials, which are both made in Colombia by two communities, 300 euros. And that's the result of this work that the government has done into educating the communities and teaching them that what they do is valuable and important and should be protected. So they know that they cannot sell it for, 2 euros. It's worth much more, especially if it takes a month to be produced. So I think that, yes, lobbying, rallying as responsible companies, educating the consumer, but all of that is futile if you don't have institutional involvement. So I think that it will be important to, raise the voice and have these issues being heard at a higher level, at a governmental level. And yeah,
to see the progress that it can make such a big difference. It can make such a change if the people who have power, are involved and actually do something about that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess that's what the EU is trying to do now with the legislation on, transparency and traceability. It's exactly that. It's to change the situation. And I think it's necessary and very welcome. And hopefully it's something that's going to work. Without the government involvement, it's very hard to go past a certain certain level. The same when I talked about fair mined gold. So this standard that I was created in Colombia, it's 10 years old, a little bit more. But again, it's a coalition between the government, NGOs, the World Bank, the Inter-American Development Bank, all of them, working together on that objective, which is to support artisanal miners. And it takes at least 1 year to certify one mine. So imagine the amount of work that you need to do for that. But they just certified two or three mines in the Amazon. So it's the first time in the world that gold is going to be produced in the Amazon without destroying the forest. And that's amazing. But it takes a lot of hard work, a lot of effort, and it's a very slow thing.
Yeah, I also think this is why the EU with the Green Deal and all these things, like, we're just starting now, And it's a process. But as Elena said, like, France is also with the Green Deal and the legislations, like, they are really fast forward. So they know about their heritage. And like with the legislations, they're really like, okay, there is still, you have to put QR codes in your garment in France now, tell the people where is it from, the supply chain and all these stuff. So, yeah, like in Europe, all these countries are a little bit diverse, but also in Austria, we have this craftsmanship ministry, which tries to support. Because, yeah, we had Sissi and Franz Josef and all these emperors, and they are like craftsmanship and tailor, like they were really, it was really famous. So, but on the other hand side, as we discussed in the question before, there are different markets, and the luxury market, it's not mainstream. So we don't see it. In Vienna, there every year in the winter months, we have balls like in Bridgerton. The Netflix series. Yes. So a lot of tailors are there who produce tuxedos and all these beautiful gowns. But you don't see it. You don't scroll on Instagram and like see advertisements for that. So yeah, like as Elena said, like it's pretty diverse. But yeah, this system change needs to do a mixture. And it's really awesome to hear that there are certificates in the Amazon for the mines. I educated myself now in this podcast. Thank you. Yeah, like it's pretty interesting. Like I'm at Fashion Revolution, but like, yeah, you can't educate about everything yourself. Like it's a lot.
The opportunity now, gold is very tricky.
Yeah, I know
because it's gold. It's not waste, and people are willing to do anything to dig it out. And most of the problems are at the artisanal mining level, and you don't really talk about it in like the mainstream fashion industries because gold is used, the currency and for technology, medicine, and half of it goes to jewelry. And the conversation has been hijacked by recycled gold. So a lot of companies in Europe, mainly, they just say, we use recycled gold, therefore we are sustainable. And there you see that they haven't like dug deeper into how the supply chain in gold is built. And so, as I said earlier, if 2 weeks ago it was extracted in the Amazon illegally, you can call it recycled gold in Europe 2 weeks later. Like it did really recycled gold. It's not right. All of the gold that had been extracted by humanity since we started mining is still in circulation. Only about 1 or 2 years worth of production have been lost. It's sitting in museums, in bags, in our jewelry boxes, on our necks, in our phones, etc. It's still circulating. So that tells you that it's not a waste product. And I just want to finish by saying that the most devastating threat to the Amazon, even like we hear a lot about cattle ranching and that you need to go vegan and stuff. That's bad because they're cutting the trees. But the trees can grow back. But what is really destroying the forest and the indigenous communities uncontacted on top of everything. There's about there's over 100 communities in the Amazon not contacted, is illegal mining because of mercury poisoning. And I invite you to go to the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal or any major publication and look for gold mining. And you're going to have a great deal, a very long list of articles from all the countries in the world, mostly a lot of them in South America. So Guyana, Brazil, Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, where they talk about how damaging illegal mining is to the forest and the communities because of mercury doesn't go away. It's super toxic. It's neurotoxic. The communities that live in the Amazon have like 10 or 20 levels, a 10 times higher level of mercury poisoning. The babies are born with small heads, with severe brain disabilities, and recycled gold is not helping with that. And yeah, so it's, besides cattle ranching, is illegal gold mining. So I invite you all to go to fairmine.org and read about it and educate yourselves, because that's a really big problem and it affects us in Europe because, you know, the river goes to the sea, the sea is full of fish, the fish is fished, and then it's sold in Europe, and we are also consuming that mercury. So it's a, never ending vicious circle.
Yeah. We in Austria had also there was a big issue about greenwashing in this jewelry brand startup scene, and it went nuts. And after that, I read a lot of articles about it. But thank you for explaining everything to us.
It's horrible. And you could check two documentaries. There's called River of Gold, and I don't remember the other one, but River of Gold by Amazon Aid. It's a documentary that talks about the destruction of the forest in Peru because of illegal mining. So yeah, it's pretty bad.
Uh-huh. Very interesting. There are a lot of documentaries about fashion or all these bad things in the world. Bad thing, no,
but there's still hope.
There's still hope.
Create. We can destroy it, so let's choose to create.
Yeah. And let's perhaps end on hope. What do we hope for with the new legislation coming in Europe, in the European Union? What are your hopes? And now we already talked about that it's the responsibility of consumers. So whoever is listening, and even if you don't really know anything about fashion industry, it's take accountability, take responsibility to educate yourself. But what are your personal hopes for the future for the fashion industry? What's going to happen, and what do you hope that in 5 years' time going to change?
I really hope that if we were to take a step back in terms of production, that we would see people actually flourish, be more unique, be more comfortable with who they are, because this would definitely bring out all our personalities up for the world to see. So I'm really hoping that this would end in a more colorful future for all of us, a colorful and responsible future.
Well, I am really hoping that the legislation is gonna crack down, at least to some extent, what's going on with fast fashion. I think on the institutional industry level, I really hope that new laws and directives and rules are gonna force these companies to stop doing all the crap that they're doing. But then I'm really hopeful in the sense that, it's true that people are more aware. There is more conversation going on around the topic, and I'm really hoping that people are gonna take ownership and read more about these things and educate themselves and choose wisely next time they're gonna feel the need to buy a piece of clothing or a piece of jewelry or something beautiful, because in the end, fashion is about beauty. It's about identity. It's about craftsmanship. And we need to turn back to those things. And there are actually brands doing beautiful things and not, damaging. Like my new favorite is Pollen. I don't know if you know it, the French bag brand. They are doing really beautiful, high quality bags. They're not that expensive. And, more companies like Pollen, more talks about true luxury, not, what is being done by some companies nowadays. I don't want to give them publicity, but there's a certain 1 million bag going on now in the press. Like, I think that's stupid. But if you go to Japan and buy something from an artisan in Kyoto or something like that, to India, to Colombia, to Africa, even in Europe, then we should talk more about those things. And I think that people are starting to understand that those need to be protected and cherished. And that's a good thing to know.
Wonderful. Okay, so I will be the last one. I think we all have a bright future if we do like this step-by-step thing with ourselves, and which is near to us and our heart. And I also think that there will be a big change because the European Union, like, they're really working on it. We don't know how long. And I always hope for our countries we live in, like that they will go fast forward. And I also think there's a really big change also with the words you're not allowed to use anymore as much as climate neutral or sustainability. Like, really big companies, they have to think about using these words. So I think, we are on a good way, but we are still in a bubble. And my approach is always like, how do we talk to people who are not in our bubble? As Elena said, like in the beginning of the conversation, and how we approach them. And I think also what I saw in Spain when we were all together in Spain, in my cohort, when I told my story, people started to think. And this is the first goal. And I think also when people listen to our podcast, maybe they will also like, okay, next time I will go and shop a new clothes. I will think about it, how to shop it, where to shop it, and why I shop it. Because like this was also the question of my mom when I was small. Okay, do you really need it? Is it the color you're normally wearing? And do you really need it? Yeah.
Wonderful. And that's exactly what we do here, about bursting the bubble and not just being in our own bubble. You know, for me, being in a corporate DI bubble, it's also beautiful to learn from other industries. And hopefully the listeners of this podcast will also become a little bit more aware and maybe spread the word for others, because we can't expect everyone to know the ingredients of our own bubble. I think that's a wonderful ending. Thank you very, very much. It's been a very interesting conversation across all different fields and aspects of diversity, equity, and inclusion. I personally learned a lot, and for our listeners, you're going to put a lot of links for them to educate themselves, as well as some brands that could be following, or at least knowing how to use or not to use. And thank you very much for this wonderful conversation.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. If you have any feedback, recommendations, or would like to be a speaker in our next episode, reach out via hi@BeamReach-inclusion.com. Also, if you need our expertise with diversity inclusion training, would like us to conduct a comprehensive audit, or need a helping hand with DI strategy, don't be shy and get in touch. Stay tuned, and until the next episode.